Jay. Jay,
Jay,
can we hear you?
Can you hear me?
Hey!
Hey, oh man, what rotten luck today. I'm glad you can hear me.
good to hear.
Yeah,
So I think we have enough to get started. Welcome everyone. There's about, I have to do math now, 17 people online, but we'll get started. Where is my notes for the meeting? Just some reminders. Next meeting, Jay is the lead for. Jay, I don't know. It seems to be you guys can run this Zoom account without me ever opening it. Have you ever tried it with screen share? Is that a problem with it? Do you recall?
I don't think so. As long as I'm running it out of yours, my university doesn't have the, I don't know what it is, professional license that allows you to go with limitless participants and for limitless time. I think I can only go for like 50 minutes and then it automatically shuts down. So that's the one drawback I have. So we've been using Google Meets.
So if you want to use Google Meets, just let me know and I will update the agenda.
Yeah, I mean, we can give it a try and see what happens.
Yeah, because that's a fair question. Because right now I have to be in the meetings, I think, to allow screen sharing.
Yeah.
But I am not certain, quite frankly. I was not the host. Did not arrive first, so you guys can certainly get on without me. But I think the whole issue is screen sharing. November 38th, so that's a good day in November. November 28th is the November meeting, and I will still not be in Ontario. I can attend, but it'd be nice to have somebody else lead that one.
Well, I'm not in Ontario, but I'll be there.
Well, I will be at my other house, and the internet is less reliable there, so it's better. I can get it started, but it'd be better off to have somebody else doing the talking in the foreground most of all. I can try it from there. We'll see how it goes. Last year at that time, I didn't have any internet, but I will have internet this time. So that's just a question if somebody wants to take the lead. Maybe I hate to do this to you, Jay, but I think your conversation is ongoing, so maybe you'd be a good lead for that one as well.
I will accept those responsibilities. Are you recording so that you can catch me saying that?
Yeah.
You can put your fingerprint on there, Jay.
Yeah.
And we have been using the Zoom for a little over a year now. So if you guys decide you want to stick with Zoom, we can. Or if you want to try other platforms, we can consider that.
No, it's just those issues. So Kathy, maybe you and I can try those things before our October meeting just to make sure I could share without you being there. And if not, maybe I'll resort to Meet and, send the universal emails out for that.
Yeah, something tells me we tried last year and we couldn't get to work.
Yeah.
That was a whole year ago.
Yeah, it's way too long.
Additions to and changes to the agenda. Is there anything that anybody wants to add to the agenda?
I don't think so. I mean, Jay and I were on an earlier Zoom today with the folks in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem about loons out there. But I think we can do whatever updates from that during our sessions later on.
Okay. I just had one thing to bring up. Somebody watched the previous videos and discovered our Slack account. And from what Nancy tells me, it's pretty much gone cold. Was that originally a professional free package for a few months, Nancy?
No, I think they have changed their policy since they were purchased, I think by whatever Salesforce. So I did notice that after 9 months, all the material and conversations are hidden now.
Oh.
So we would have to get a pro subscription, which is, I think, put in was like $8 a month. So it's not a huge amount of money, but still,
yeah,
it's an ongoing cost. Anyway, Gail and I have been having a little conversation via Slack right now. We just can't see our previous conversations, which is too bad.
And the question is whether we used it enough. And unless we have, I think, an overall agreement that we want to use it, I tend to think probably we should let it go because none of us were very good on it. We really did not keep it up.
The settings I used it were like political campaigns where there were conversations going all day long.
Mm,
And I don't think we have those kinds of needs for ongoing.
Yeah, that's what we
Robust.
do at
Yeah.
work. We use it to converse with our coworkers right around Canada. So it works well for that.
hmm
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a big group of wildlife rehabilitators in New England who love using it. But again, as you were saying, Sherry, or Gail, I think it's that ongoing kind of conversation. You know, there's several messages a day coming through it. One other thing before we go on, if you decide that you want to use Zoom later on for one of the later meetings, I've got a university account, and so I could set one up too, if you decide that's the way you want to go.
Yeah, you make
and I
as
do
many
too.
meetings as I do, Mark. That might work well too.
Yeah, and University of Wisconsin has one also, so
Mhm.
I'm happy to do that.
Okay. Okay. So at this point, I think we're just gonna let the Slack go quietly unless we decide we want to use it. Next up is a quick update from Mark.
Okay. Well, we have our rehab group meeting right after this one, if any of you want to stay at 5:30. Don't have much rehab update at this point. It doesn't seem to have been a crazy active year. I think most of the threats are the typical threats we're used to: line entanglement and boat hits and lead poisoning. Some places had way too much water this year and nests flooded out. Some places had way too little water this year and birds were having trouble nesting. But I think in general, most of the people that I've talked to have found that loon reproduction was a relatively average year, I think, in most areas. Jay, would that reflect what you've been hearing too, and Tracy?
Yeah, in general.
Yeah,
that's what
yeah.
I've been hearing.
Yeah, in terms of the high path avian influenza, this is one of those things where no news is good news. We have gotten back results, I think, on 40 loons tested in the Northeast here. Every single one was negative. We haven't had a positive yet in New York or the 6 New England states. So I'm cautiously optimistic about that. I think what people are concerned about is, you know, we're in the flocking season now. The birds are in their post-breeding social aggregations where they may be closer together and there may be more chance for disease transmission. And certainly when I talk to state agency people around the Northeast and in the Midwest, we're seeing a resurgence of high path avian influenza in waterfowl and birds of prey right now. There was a lull a month or so ago, but it's coming back up as birds are flocking and migration is starting. So whether we'll see anything in loons, I don't know, but so far, so good, knock on wood.
Okay, that's terrific.
Mark, are you in the waterfowl? Are those all not symptomatic cases?
No, many of them are symptomatic cases.
Oh, okay.
We've had diving duck deaths, we've had dabbling duck deaths, mallards and black ducks. There were some cases in ringnecks, spotty cases in Canada geese. And it seems sort of weirdly unpredictable. I was talking to one waterfowl biologist who'd been out cannon netting black ducks and mallards, and they caught, roughly 100 in one night, and 60 of them tested positive with no clinical signs, and 40 of them tested negative in the same flock. And 2 lakes over, they were finding dead ducks. So what's going on, and what all of the pieces are to this puzzle, I don't think anybody understands at the moment.
Yeah, I was going to say, in Ohio, we just got a warning from our Division of Wildlife about an outbreak in domestic foul. And so, of course, that's happening as things are starting to migrate through, which is cause for concern. But
Yeah, there have been tons of postings in, backyard poultry, chickens, ducks, guinea fowl, all sorts of things. Not so much in wild birds.
Sorry, I'm just double checking if I have everybody in the list here for who's here.
Okay.
Any other updates on that topic from anyone, or that pretty much cover the soft subject? Okay.
What I would say is that most of the people I know who were banding birds this year, the BRI folks and the LPC folks, and I think Nina Schock in New York, and were swabbing live healthy loons, the swabs are still in freezers. They mostly have not been tested yet. So I think our expectation is those birds are going to come up negative, but we don't know. I think most of the agencies that are doing the testing are weeks and weeks behind on running the test.
Okay, that's good to know. I guess the next item is the education outreach tool. Now, I noticed there was a few people who gone in and added edits to the draft. Did anybody have any comments they wanted to pull up, or Nancy or Erica, do you have anything you wanted to say on this topic? Brian?
The
Go ahead.
comments to me made sense. I liked how it sort of shortened things, but I don't have it up right now, so I need to go back. But I didn't have anything more to add or any edits to make.
Yeah, people can make them seem shorter. That's great. I think we get into this world where we're so busy thinking about how we always do our science. We don't think outside the box. Brian, did you have something to say?
I did. I have not added any edits, but I've been following this, and perhaps I wasn't a member of the group when you first began this, but my major question is, who is the target audience for this particular publication?
We had a draft that we sent around a while ago, and there's probably something in that particular folder that mentioned it, but the target audience is very generalized people that are visiting the lake. So it's just really much the very first document we would share, and there would be potentially other more appropriate documents that they have other interests. Is that in agreement with you, Nancy and Erica? I think that's what our aim was.
Yes, and like by generalized, I would say like resort owners, people who are going to resorts, people who are visiting lakes who really aren't knowledgeable about loons, so that we hit these people who are really utilizing the lakes a lot more, and we are trying to educate them about how they can help protect loons and what their behavior is doing that might be not so great.
And real estate agents was another group.
Yeah, real estate agents and, people who are renting boats, those kind of audiences who aren't really educated about loons.
Would you see this as a printed document that would be handed out to folks or available in their cottage or whatever?
Yes, printed and then also given to like resort owners as a PDF file so that they can print it themselves in case they run out of the printed documents.
They could put their logo on it, any of those sorts of things. Yeah.
Okay.
So Natasha,
So-
you had some, oh, sorry, Gail, I just wanted to ask Natasha, I know that she had some comments last month, if I'm remembering correctly, on how to organize it. So if we get the basic content about, in place there and having everybody's review there, perhaps at this point, Natasha, some of the thinking that you were doing in terms of organizing would come into play, and we can kind of play with the material to make it visually appealing.
Yeah, I actually, sorry,
Go ahead,
I
Natasha.
actually had tried to make a very rough draft of the fact sheet of a two-sided fact sheet with images, and the last meeting I had the idea to condense some of them down, so I tried that, and it was a very busy month, so I didn't really get to working on it until today, which is why I didn't get to email it out to everyone, but I have.
We lost you, Natasha.
You're muted. You muted again.
Oops, sorry, I did that by accident. I put the link in the chat to the very rough draft I had on Canva of what of my attempt to put in some graphics and condense down information.
I'm just gonna, you guys, I will share this if people want to see it. Did you use any of the new edits that were in the Google, Natasha?
I think so, and I might not have gotten the most recent ones because I had downloaded a version and then made some of my own edits, so it might not be the most updated one with everyone else's edits.
So
Well, first,
Natasha, just to move us forward instead of kind of wordsmithing maybe during this meeting, if you could share that, I have a Canva Pro account, and if you share with me, I could kind of go back and forth a little bit and make sure some of those edits are concerned, and then we can share it out again kind of as a.
So
It looks great, Natasha. Wow, I'm looking at it right now, and
Right.
The only thing I'm seeing missing here is we'll have to figure out how to put professional logos on it, and that's for a couple reasons. Like, well, you got logo. Okay, so you've already thought of that, because people are going to wonder who this information is from, but you've already accommodated that there. But yeah, if you want to share that Canva, you know how to share it so that people can edit it.
Yeah, I should be able to have a link to share to edit, or I can even probably add people to the design if they have their email on Canva, but I can try to do that after the meeting.
Cool. I think that'd be a good thing to do. And thank you so much for taking on that task. It looks really good.
It does.
this
Thank
looks
you.
it
great.
looks fantastic.
This looks great. My only fear is that it's just too many words and it's not going to get read. So if you go back to the first page, like that first paragraph could just say 200 feet away.
Now,
Zoom
have
camera,
you, Gail, feel free to go into the document
So-
and edit it.
So I might make a version myself with as few words as possible, more like phrases.
Have you been on the main document, Gail?
Yeah, I wouldn't dare to make any changes to
Oh,
that. And I tried to
no.
figure out how to download it and I couldn't.
Oh, feel free. You just have to use suggesting, because if you use suggesting, we can, it's just like track changes. We can ignore it if we figure.
I'd still be afraid to.
Because that's the whole point of that, right? And we can also track histories on that document. So if you guys are hesitant to do that, don't be, go ahead and change it. Because it makes it easier for us to visualize and for Natasha and Nancy to visualize, deal with it after the fact. Yeah. So the whole point is to end up with one document that we all want, right?
Right. I just think people will look at this, see all the words and put the paper down. And like recently I went to a resort, a cabin, and the cabin owner had posted 3 pages and put it on the refrigerator. I never read it. I mean, people are just
But I do like
more,
having,
more now than ever. They want speedy, quick, easy.
I guess the one thing I worry about in doing that is we lose not just the directive, but the why. If we just say steer 200 feet away, they're going to want to know why. And I think I like the original document of talking about the issue and then giving a little bit of the biology behind it. So I guess is there a happy medium in between? I'd like to say steer clear, but I think if we keep it within 2 pages, it looks pretty good. I think maybe it's just a little wordsmithing that we need to do. Because I think if we just say, hey, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, they're not going to understand the problems. And that I think that maybe is going a little too far the other direction.
Is there any way to prioritize the order so that the folks that aren't going to turn it over to page 2 will at least get the information that you really want them to have on page 1? That's my concern. The same as Gail had mentioned, that folks are just not going to read it. I'd love to see it all on 1 page, but the material that's there is great. I'd love them to have all of that information, but I'm just fearful that if they get turned off, that they won't read any of it.
Well, Brian, one of the things that makes me wonder about is what size page? I think we're all thinking about 8.5 by 11, but there's a handout, and I sent it around to a few of you. I know Tracy has seen one. This is an old one that's a Loon specific handout, and this is 11 by 14.
And it's lovely, but the thing is, home printers can't print it. So we want to keep it as the most convenient size. Unfortunately, within between home printers and PDS and accessibility needs, things cannot be as pretty as they used to be. We have to look at it a bit differently. And I honestly think, Brian, if we can take Natasha's for it and we can make those headlines pop a little bit more, I think we'll all have to think about that.
Yeah.
Or maybe if we take the one, one of the versions we've been looking at, if we did something like put 200 feet in red bold font. So that would be a way to reach both concerns, giving the reason why, but also zoning in on the behavior that we're looking for.
Yeah. It's just a matter of finding the right way. Yeah.
Now,
So,
Kathy,
sorry?
No, I was going to say, you've got me wondering about my home printer. I'm sitting here looking at it. It won't do more than 8 inches wide, but what about legal paper that's 8 by 14?
Do you have legal paper at home?
I actually do.
So this is the kind of question you have to think about the audience, right? What do they readily hand? And if they have to change the paper in the printer, that's one less likely chance of them printing it.
Yeah. Okay.
And I know it seems silly, but it does make a difference in the big picture. So actions on this will be Nancy and Natasha. And Natasha, you can send that link to me too. We'll review Canva version. Does that sound right?
Can I be involved? Can I be involved with Natasha and Nancy?
But Brian, I like the idea too that you have of sort of maybe prioritizing the order for the first page, because I can see having be an ethical angler on the first page as well.
I had that same comment before, that I thought focusing on the issues that are the biggest threats to loons would be good to have up front. And I also think it's harder for people to connect to how shoreline development affects loons, where it's much more immediate to know how a boat can collide with a loon or how a wake could wash out a nest.
Right. I think many people that are reading it, they understand the concept of shoreline development, but they're not necessarily going to be involved in that themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, that might be something we consider removing to have more space.
Could be. It could be. That's something, and go for it. Do what works good. All right. Anything else on that topic?
So what do you suggest our action items are for that then, Kathy? Should we?
I think that the actions for Nancy and Natasha and Gail will review Canva to prioritize issues and make immediate reading sections more obvious.
Okay, and so by this time next month to have another
update.
I think
update
so.
on that.
I think if our goal is next spring and we're doing this trickle one meeting a month, but don't hesitate if you need people to look at something right away. Don't hesitate to contact myself or Nancy or Erica. We all have access to the list of volunteers, the list of members, and we can send a notice out to people and say, hey, take a look at this now. That the committee needs an update. That can be done.
I have one more question. So most of the lakes I've been to have a large board where things are posted, like Eurasian milfoil warnings, things like
yeah.
that. Do we see this being used that way as well?
There's no reason why it couldn't be. Like if you create it as a PNG file, you can just take it to Vistaprint and whatever you use down in the US and have it printed on a real estate sign page or coroplast. That's what I do for all my signs. I just make a PNG and get them printed by a service on the coroplast, and you got a nice sign.
What's
So,
what's that? Something waterproof?
the corrugated plastic. Yeah, it's kind of like a Ripley plastic.
So it's waterproof?
Oh yeah, it's plastic.
Never heard of it.
I'm sure you've used it.
Like a foam board.
What do you call it, Jay?
It's almost like a foam board, but it's just corrugated plastic rather than foam lining the insides.
Okay. I just have to give a note to Rob Alvo. He does not have the link. So I have to send him the link. Anything else on that topic, guys?
This is Sherry. Just a real quick thing. We tried to put up loon signs in Minnesota on various boat landing areas, and we were not allowed to do so unless it was approved by Minnesota DNR at their sites and U.S. Forest Service by their sites. So, you know, if it's just a resort or lake association that, you know, I don't know, it might be different, but yeah, that's the trouble we ran into.
Well, we would have to talk up here. We'd have to talk to the landowner if it's on a private lake or a park. But for the rest of them, like if it's just a normal lake and there's a public ramp, we would probably put it up without a problem.
Yeah.
I guess I don't envision this being put up in that situation because there's so much text. I think it would be more appropriate to have inside, you know, a resort building or in a real estate agency, you know, like the signs. I could show you.
Let me just add one
These are
more
the signs
comment.
that we use for. Oops, goodness. Where's my? This is not
like a Loon though.
Oh, okay. So it doesn't like my sign.
Paper.
Oh, how do I change the background? Hang on. Blur my background. Will that help? Oh, there we go.
Oh yeah, that to me is a nice little sign for near a nest, which I don't use up here because I don't want to tell people where our nests are. But would I use a big sign at boat ramps because you always have to line up for your turn to put your boat in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Things like that, and beer stores, because beer stores are iconic in Canada.
Maybe I don't understand. We're not like in thinking that we're going to use this fact sheet as a sign.
I don't see it, but it could be if it's appropriate for your audience.
I just think it's too much text. I think that's where we get into too much text. If it's like on a boat ramp or something, we need something that's like really simple.
Short.
Is there a way for you to share that, Erica? You have a soft copy?
I do. Hang on.
Gail,
I love it.
Have you seen the folder, Gail, that has all the different brochures and stuff in it?
I didn't know there was one folder with that. No.
There is a folder with that. If you go to that Google, the Google Drive is on the bottom of all the emails.
Yep.
And you'll find one in there about education. And it's got a small collection. I don't think that one that you would like to see now is in there though.
Oh, is it not?
I don't know, because we might have limited down to just ones relating to this document.
No, there isn't one that's a folder that's called either of the things you just said.
All right, I mean,
Hang on.
There should be a folder with signage and data sheets.
I
and
can't
things
remember
like
what
that.
it's called.
Yeah,
Help Protect Loon's fact sheets has a whole bunch in it.
yeah. Help protect loons.
That the
will-
one?
Yeah, I will send the link.
That
Can I
only has
share?
documents. That only has documents in it. Folder out.
All right, now,
Here it is. I just shared it, if that's all right. So this is our Loon alert sign.
Yeah.
We have a lead alert sign too. So this is we have their 11 by 11 plastic sign that we intend for folks to use at their boat landing, and we do recommend that they ask permission of their local municipality or whoever is in control of that boat landing. So, but this is generally it's simple, and you know, there's tips for who to call in case there's problems. So
Yeah, if you could put that on the Google Drive, that is
sure.
wonderful.
yeah, probably all of us have something similar. Now, we should
Not where I live.
we should all finalize this topic, because Jay needs some time, or else we'll run out of time. So any else in particular you want to discuss on this before we move back?
Nancy, were you going to say something? I mean, one thing that came to my mind is this something that we want to make into a pamphlet rather than a front and a back. To make a trifold, you could actually have that as something you could put at a boat landing. You know, if they have a little box there for pamphlets, and things like that. That sort of struck me as we had this conversation, but something that you could make into a trifold. But I'm sorry that I'm taking the discussion a little further, time-wise. And I don't mind waiting another month. Yeah, but
It all goes back to me to two things: how easy it is for an individual who's not with us to print and put it at that boat ramp, and how likely is a piece of paper that's going to get damp to be picked up at the boat ramp. So while I'm not against the idea, it wouldn't work for my audience, but it may work for other people's audience. So it's a fair thing to consider.
yeah, but you could use a trifold in a lodge or somewhere like that too, so that it isn't that big. You know, in terms of the ubiquity, I don't know if that's the right word, but thinking that it can be used in multiple ways. Well, just brainstorming. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah, we have both a brochure and we have a pamphlet, like that's more like 8.5 by 11 size, and the brochure goes much faster. The people prefer it because it fits into them or their kiosks, or it fits into something they can give out on the water to people, you know, courtesy boat inspectors or whoever. So just, yeah, so we see that one being a lot more popular.
Okay, so something to keep in mind.
We do
So-
both.
Are we good with the actions for that one? Any thoughts? Any more thoughts? Okay. All right. Then, Jay, I think we're over to you.
Okay, thanks, Kathy. I'll try to share my screen. Can everybody see this okay? Or does everybody see each other?
No, I can see it.
Okay, let me see if I can make it a show. A little better there. Okay, definitely I'll probably not be able to go through everything I had planned for today, but I wanted to start a discussion about thinking about a way in which perhaps a lot of our volunteers can try to assess nesting success on lakes, especially when time and people are somewhat limited. And so in the context of our group, I just want to make sure that in terms of the citizen science working group, it sort of falls under the category of thinking about a shared standard way of monitoring productivity, in this case, nesting and hatching success. Maybe figure out best ways to train volunteers to gather accurate data. And again, in this case, nesting and hatching success. And then figure out a way in which we can maybe compile this type of information or perhaps even add it to our surveys to assess long-term health goals for loons, either a regional or national or international scale. And so why nesting and hatching success? I'm sorry. One of the things that I've found, at least in the work I've done over the past 30 years or so, is that hatching success appears to be one of the most critical aspects of reproductive success. I'd say, at least in many of the lakes that I've worked at, about half of the reproductive failures are associated with nesting success, and then fledging success is relatively very small. And so it's a part of the reproductive season that maybe needs to be a little bit more scrutinized. However, with a lack of resources, mainly time, space, people, and money, we don't have the ability to closely monitor nesting and hatching success. In fact, many of us are only able to go out once or twice a year on some of our lakes. And that's usually when we're looking for breeding or looking for territorial pairs, and whether we're looking for fledging success. So this is a part of the life cycle that appears, I think, is kind of important. And perhaps maybe there's a post hoc way in which we can do that. And so my question is there a methodology that we can have our volunteers use to assess nesting and hatching success during any time of the year? So if they do come out for their survey later in the season, whether it be in mid to late July or early to mid August, is there a way in which they could go back, and if they don't find chicks, begin to think about what the possible causes of reproductive failure may be? And so just brief background, there's a lot of papers out there, and I'm not including probably 95% of them, but I think most of us know that nesting is usually initiated from any time after ice is out to perhaps as late as early August. But usually, based upon some of the work done by Scott Sutcliffe and the people at LPC, have found that usually within 13 to 54 days after reestablishment of territories, the loons will likely attempt their first nesting attempt. And then the birds usually nest along the shoreline in water that's usually at or greater than 30 centimeters deep for a great quick escape. And if there is reproductive failure, many birds re-nest roughly 2 weeks after nest failure. And I think we all know that the incubation period is roughly 25 to 29 days. So it is a significant time in the summer. Nest locations usually, many, notably on islands, and those are usually greater than or equal to 2 acres in size. Many of the nests are found on the side of the island that's facing a shore or on other islands. And when they're on the shore, they're usually away from the prevailing wind, both leeward and windward sides. The loons are notorious at nesting on different locations, and both Judy McIntyre and Scott Sutcliffe have tried to classify nests into different types, and I kind of like the way in which Scott Sutcliffe has done it by looking at one type as being hummocks, which includes maybe masses of rotting vegetation or detritus, or hollowed out depressions on top of old muskrat houses. They also can nest in scrapes. That is, they can just go right on bare land or bare sand, or even on a floating dock, right, Mark, in terms of choosing basically a bare spot to nest upon. Or they can also construct nests from vegetation, including grasses, sedges, various reeds, even lichens and mosses. So I kind of like how Scott has separated those into these 3 categories, and I think they pretty much follow in the same categories Judy McIntyre has done that. I know I have copies of both theses, and I can I know Judy's I have as a PDF I can put on our drive, and I'll try to get Scott's up there too about his work in New Hampshire, because I think they really do some very detailed descriptions on nest sites. Just a little bit of information from Judy's work, at least in loons that nest in central Minnesota, the nests tend to be roughly 2 feet in diameter, with an inside diameter of roughly about a little less than a foot, and roughly 1 inch to 3 inches deep. And what she found is that there really was no difference in the different types of nests in terms of their size, whether they're successful or not. They all seem to be pretty close to one another. And Scott found pretty much the same thing. He did find that these hummock nests were a little bit more oblong, but nevertheless roughly the same size, although he went metric rather than in English units. So pretty equivalent there. Anyhow, as many of you know too, they'll proceed to lay females will lay 2 eggs in a nest, and those eggs vary in size and in thickness, and there have been a number of studies that have looked at that, and I'll be glad to put those on the drive if you'd like. As all of you know, the eggs can vary quite a bit in color, from a greenish olive to a brownish olive, with the flecking of dark spots on the eggs, but they are oblong, and that's very important with respect to identifying loons from non-loon eggs, which is maybe important to describe to some of your observers. The method of hatching is very similar to what we see in a lot of other birds. The chicks will pip and cut usually along the broad side of the egg, sort of like a can opener, and pop the top, or pop the bottom if you want to call it that, off the egg. And in doing so, the chicks appear to make perpendicular cuts. And so as a result, many of the fragments that you'll see remaining in the nests will not be sharp or at acute angles, but kind of squarish in the nest. And so as a result, if the egg is gone, good indicator of a successful hatch is the squared kind of fragments that are left in the nest. Another thing that I think Rob Alvo pointed out in his really good paper is that hatch chicks will also leave that inner membrane, or that inner shell, which you can see right here. So if you do have a good chunk of the egg left, that remaining membrane is a good telltale for a successful hatch. One other thing to remember, and this video kind of shows it nicely, so I thought I'd play it, but it's a little bit long, so I'll just cut right to the chase here, is that after hatching 2, the parents will often return to the nest and grab the larger fragments at least, and proceed to take the fragment into the water and drop it in there. And so if you do have a nest where it's pretty empty, one other thing you might want to look at is in the waters just outside the nest, to see if you've got that fragment in the water. So I always make sure to tell people too, is always check the water surrounding the nest for either whole eggs or shell fragments, or even remaining eggs that have both the inner and the outer membrane. That's not always the case. In fact, there are situations where you come to a nest and you see something that doesn't look like that classic can opener hatch and pop out of the egg, and that nice sort of perpendicular cuts. In this situation, something has come to the nest and has jaggedly cut the eggs at various patterns, and has eaten all the contents within the egg and has removed that inner membrane. And so that's a good telltale that that nest has failed. As all of you know, I guess there's a lot of causes for nest failure. Predation, including a number of mammalian predators, have been cited, as well as avian predators. We also know that loons can lose a nest to water level fluctuations or weather that can result in the flooding of a nest. And then you can have the exact opposite. You can have individuals abandon a nest, and that could be caused by a significant drop in water levels, which prevent the birds from getting back up to the nest safely. Or it can be a result of frequent disturbance from the nest, possibly from human activities. And then
and also abandonment due to black flies is common.
That's right. Black flies, as well as displacement of eggs from the nest. So you could have certain eggs being pushed off the nest by the loon or not by the loon. And so again, if you have an empty nest, one thing to check is look into the water or look to the sides of the nest, or even look within a 5 meter distance around the nest to see if that egg has rolled anywhere or has been taken by something and then dropped somewhere else. So there's a lot of different causes, and again, I have included all of them here, but there are a lot of factors that may go into nest loss. And again, there's a lot of papers out there that I can put online. So I guess the big question or goal of this is to think about, really, is there a methodology that we could give to our volunteers to assess nesting and hatching success at any time of the year, whether it be during the nesting period itself or sometime after, maybe when they're surveying the lake for chicks. And then secondly, can we develop a reference that can be used by any and all of us to sort of be as a general guide to help make decisions that maybe are based out of a consensus of this group to surmise whether or not loons have successfully nested and have they hatched. And so, not to make this too cumbersome, but in fact, I'm guessing it will become cumbersome, is there sort of a flow chart or a decision tree that we can make to begin to assess, a likely cause of failure, or at least the outcome of a nest? And so, not to go into this in too depth, because I want us to put something together like this, but we can ask, whether or not we have chicks on a lake, and if so, we can assume that there's been a successful hatch depending on the time of season. And if not, can we find a probable nest, and what types of information can we provide to help a person figure that out? And if so, can we find evidence of a nest and look to see if there were perhaps eggs in there to indicate that there was a successful laying that happened in there? Can we also look at successful hatching? And then if not, what types of decisions can we make based upon why there's been a nest failure? And again, there's been a paper by Windles et al. Looking at the effect of shoreline development and water level fluctuations on nesting success in loons. And this is the one appendix decision tree that I wanted us to sort of think about as a guide. I don't know if I necessarily agree with the logic associated with this, but perhaps it can be a way to sort of think about in an organized way how we might want to put something together. And there are some things in here, again, I thought maybe we could have for discussion, maybe not so much today because we're a little bit short on time, but maybe we can start to think about ways in which we can begin to address this. So for example, if the eggs are crushed in a nest, that's always been attributed, or at least by the Windles paper, to associate with mammal predation. But if you look at the literature, there's also been evidence of eagle crushing of nests, and so maybe mammalian predation is a general way to sort of think about it, knowing that there are exceptions to the rule, or perhaps maybe we need to think a little bit more broadly as to the cause of predation. So the point I'm really trying to get at is, can we begin to think about putting together a decision tree, to think about having somebody go out later in the season to assess whether or not loons have successfully nested and if they successfully hatched, particularly if there are no chicks on the lake. And I guess to get the ball rolling, I'm kind of interested in how everybody else surveys these. And maybe one question to spur the conversation is to think about, or ask all of you, what do you do when you look for a nest or chicks on the lake? Do you, when you don't have any chicks on the lake, do all of our groups look for nests? Do they have the time to do that? And if so, how are they directed to do that? I guess the next question I was kind of interested in is, when you come up on a possible nest, do you assess whether or not there has been successful laying of eggs in that nest? And how do you assess hatching success or failure? And then finally, when you do determine that nest failure has happened, do you and how do you assess a likely cause? And it could be as general as, hey, we just found that the eggs were depredated. We didn't attribute it to any particular type of predator, or is it that the eggs were abandoned and we don't associate why they were abandoned? It could have been because of, again, water level fluctuation, human disturbance, including black flies. And so I guess that's really what I want to sort of have us brainstorm and begin to think about. So maybe I don't know, Kathy, with the time we have, is this something that I should just table and get people to think about, or perhaps even come up with a questionnaire to begin this conversation? What does the group think?
I can show you what we do. I have our form up right now. We sort of do a territory summary, and we really don't get into the dichotomous key that you were showing. Hang on. Oh,
I think I stopped sharing. Did I stop sharing, everybody?
you
Yeah,
did.
Okay.
So this is, and this does not always has not always filled out correctly. I think I have more problems with volunteers doing this. I think a dichotomous key like what you showed, I think will be, there would be some loon rangers who would do it well, but probably for the most part, they just look at it and be like, and possibly it might be better to say, hey, we'd really like you to put up one of those motion detection cameras in a specific way, and maybe they could get the data that way too. But this is what we do. You know, did the eggs fail to hatch? Yes or no? If it did fail to hatch, do they know if it was predated? Was it due to water level change, or was there something else that happened? And then what, you know, if there was a second nesting attempt, did it fail to hatch? So this is basically from Loon, you know, Loon Watch here in Wisconsin. This is what we do, kind of related to what you're looking at. I'm curious what other people do. I can unshare too, and if anyone has their form or any questions.
Yeah, this is Mark. I've got sort of a question. I don't do a lot of this, but I'm listening to what you're saying and I'm fascinated by this. And I remember reading Rob's paper on egg hatching. And I'm wondering a couple of things. One is, you know, again, everybody carries cameras these days with their phones.
Yeah.
And so maybe taking more images and sending more images around could be useful. I'm also thinking about something that the rehab and rehabilitation group does, which is sometimes on our Zoom sessions, we have case discussions where we bring up, you know, a particular loon problem and talk about, you know, how we should have treated it or what worked or what didn't work. I'm wondering if we could do something like that with this group, where somebody brings in, you know, their photos or their records, and we discuss it, and we all learn from one another about, you know, shape of eggshell fragments and all of this sort of data gathering to improve our efforts as a group.
Yeah, I like that. And Linda, are you still on? Do you have that picture of your nest?
Maybe she's getting ready for the next group.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. There's,
It's early yet. We got half an hour.
There's a nest that they
Oh,
had
there's
on
Linda,
their
she's
lake
here.
that looked like a bulldozer went through, and so it was, you know.
I mean, one thing that we see with a lot of the nest cams is we see turtles, in particular snapping turtles, sometimes crawling up on nests, and I wonder if they could just crush things like a bulldozer.
I'm just
Yeah.
wondering if back now. I'm just wondering if it was a snapping turtle that did that
Okay.
too, or a bear. That was the two
Okay.
things. But it was pretty much.
It was a huge nest, and it was like a huge amount of material that was moved.
Yeah, there's a lot of bear with the cameras now. There's a lot more reportings of bears disturbing loons' nests than I recall. With
Yeah.
the cameras and doing exactly just that. But is there I guess maybe not the need, but a guide to make to help our volunteers, Erica? So in other words, to help a volunteer identify that this is something we characterize as something being depredated versus something that isn't.
No, I mean, typically what
and you lost the chicks after the hatch, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, what I recommend is if they've observed the predation, that they write it down, and if they didn't observe the predation, then it's just sort of a guess. So I don't have any guide like what you had.
Okay.
That's
I mean, would
what I
this be
have.
help? Maybe if we were to come up with a document, a guide, I don't know, to help. I don't know.
Yeah, I think pictures would probably be helpful to sort
Yeah,
of
yeah,
see
yeah.
something that's an example of, if it looks like this, it's probably
Hmm.
Yeah,
uh,
that's
that.
exactly why I had to call for the pictures, is to help with as many as possible.
One of the things that really helped me is, of course, a lot of my volunteers don't know how to do that at all. I still have volunteers that are sending me pictures of an adult saying it's a juvenile. So,
Oh.
so we've got a long way to go with some people. But what really helped me is I talked to Jay and James Peruke when I was trying to figure out if about a particular nest and the eggs. And James Peruke sent me one of those decision trees or dichotomous key, and I was able to find the egg shells that were in the water, and they looked like what he was describing. And of course, a picture would really help. And then I also found the pieces cut a certain way, like in those squarish things. So there were actually 2 chicks that did hatch. So from that Edge Shade Lake up on the Echo Trail, I was able to confirm that. Then somebody else came along, photographer, and then confirmed it again. And then both of them were taken by eagles. But anyway, we did get the first part of the story right. So that was helpful.
So it sounds like this would be a great idea to have. I don't think it's going to be a quick development.
No.
Because I think we do literally need that dichotomous key and maybe 2 or 3 pictures of every different stage, which means we probably need to spend some of our winter times, for those of you who have nest photos, see if you have a couple to share. Does that make sense, Jay?
Yeah, and I'd say maybe even look at the key that we currently have from Windell's and say, hey, is this doable, or B, let's think about our decision trees as we go out ourselves and say, hey, what are some things that we sort of look for first, and then what do we look for second and third, and sort of down the line. And I guess that's really what I'm trying to get at here, is that, let's just say you're going in from scratch and you're trying to figure out what's going on. What do you tend to do, and for me it was, well, I look for the chicks, and if they're there, great, that's usually an indication that they've had a hatch. And if not, then what do I do? And if I wasn't on that lake during the nesting period, then I start to, comb the periphery, maybe selecting islands first, knowing that might be the preferred spot, and seeing if I can find something of that size and shape that would indicate a loon nest. And then once I find that, then start looking for other telltales, like if there's any fragments in the nest, that's a good thing. If there's anything in the water or on the land that would indicate that they've been taken off the nest and eaten, or maybe have hatched. And then if they haven't hatched, what might be the cause? Were they abandoned? Were they depredated? Were they knocked in the water, or some other issue? And so that's the way in which I rationally go in and think about these things. And so there's sort of a dichotomous key going on, or a decision tree going on in my mind. But I don't know if that's the same as what everybody else does.
And there's always a chance that document is actually getting up there in age. There's always a chance our new knowledge may change some of the ways we run it.
Mm-hmm.
Right, especially with the camera stuff. As we have cameras, that really is the ultimate way to figure it out. But if we don't have those, I'm thinking about our friends in the greater Yellowstone area, where they basically are hiking days to get to a lake just to figure out what happened, and to give them something that they could use would be really helpful. Some of us are monitoring lakes daily, which is great because you really have a good beat on things, but there's some of us that don't. And so I guess really it's gathering that information. And so, when I first brought this up, that was my big call, as many pictures as you guys could to provide me information that we can have discussions and think about these things is great. So maybe what I should do is just throw this beginning of this tree, like I sort of did in this slide as I was brainstorming, to the rest of you and say, does this make sense? And maybe that's the homework we can have for October, is to look at this weird tree I kind of created and interject, where possible. But
That'd be great. And I think that's, so what I've got for homework right now is add photos and keys that you have to the drive. Maybe review that atlas, if that appendix, if you haven't. And Jay shares his draft tree and people decide what they think of it.
Yeah. And
Does that work?
What are
yeah,
you
I
going to
got
call
one-
the folder, Jay?
Oh, Jay's Christmas tree or something like that. No, I'll just put it in there and I'll say something about maybe assessment of nesting and hatching success. And then, you know, like I said, I was sort of putting this tree together on a PowerPoint, but you know, I was just sitting down with a pad of paper and really thinking about how I go about things.
Now, there is a whiteboard, so you could play with it on here, but I don't think any of us have ever used it. So maybe that's a
No, not
bad
yet.
idea.
No. I think if anything, I just want to sort of have people sort of think about the logic that they use when they try to assess nesting, and does it match with what I have? And if not, we can just have that conversation. You know, you had that great tool that you tried to use that last Zoom meeting, Kathy, where you were writing. You know, it'd be great to sort of, you know, more or less have a chalkboard and have everybody give input as I'm drawing. But I don't know if I'm that technically savvy.
It's easy to find. I think when you screen share, it comes up and you have to hover over the top and it gives you a bunch of options.
Okay.
But just your luck, it's different in Google Meets.
Yeah. I'll try to refine my Jay's beginning of a tree, and I'll put that up as a separate file to see what people think. Knowing that I'm over time, I just see it's 5:03. So Mark, if we're cutting into rescue, rehab, and triage.
Well, that doesn't start till 5:30. So.
Oh, okay, great.
Well, we want we want a bio break in the middle there.
So it's 5:03. Any questions? It seems to be the tree. Everybody likes a tree.
It's a start.
It's a start.
I had a couple more ideas. You know, we talked about black flies and things like that too, and I definitely can put some things on there.
And once we have everything together, there's enough capacity in the group to build something pretty.
Well, and ultimately my hope is to build a document with pictures, you know, to exactly sort of indicate what we're meaning by all of these. So, you know, my delusion of grandeur is to have some document, just like, I don't even know if we want to even try to even publish it, you know, where we say, here's a basic decision tree that citizen scientists can use to try to give your best estimate of nesting and hatching success for loons when you don't have the ability to watch them all the time. And I think that might be useful.
Put in Canadian field naturalist, Jay.
You think?
There you go. It's a great journal.
Do you have inside knowledge, Kathy?
On that one, I don't know. I just know that you published on it recently. The inside knowledge I have is with ACE, Avian Ecosystem and Conservation. And I think they're probably, I don't know how readily they would do that one without formal, because there's no research involved, right? So
right.
I don't think that's a good one for ACE Eco.
I'm looking for some sort of note or some sort of, you know, something that's going to be accessible and available. So that's the biggest thing, accessibility and availability to help.
Okay. So that gives us lots of stuff for the next time, and I will miss it, which is probably just as well, because I'm at least useful in that one since we don't do much in that stage, but I'll be looking forward to reviewing it afterwards. Anything else we need to discuss, or any other comments on this topic before we move over further?
Yeah, sorry, I took too much time there, Kathy.
No,
I always have too many slides.
No, that's good stuff, Jay.
I don't think we've ever finished by 5. I could be wrong though. All right. So Jay, let's reach out to each other before the next meeting so you're ready to go.
Okay.
And that's it, unless anybody has anything to add.
Yeah, this is Rob here. I just received a paper, Mager et al. 2022 from a friend of mine. I haven't read it yet. It's called Foraging Patterns in Overwintering Common Loons.
Oh.
So I look forward to reading it. Jay's online here. Do you want to say something quickly about it?
Oh, I think that's just a lot of work by co-author Sherry Apps, who's also on this. That's a lot of work that was initiated by Brooks Wade and Jim Peru,
Okay.
looking at freshwater behavior of loons during the non-breeding season. And so we're just sort of starting working on looking at what loons are doing during the winter. Erica's been down there. I invite any and all. Luann, there you are. She's been down there. So you've all been a part, many of you have been a part of it. Jen Denny. And if anybody would like to come and experience that, please let me know. It's really a tribute to the work of Brooks Wade, first and foremost.
Come and
Yeah,
experience what? I don't understand.
Well, most loons winter on the marine waters, as you know, but there's a small populations or more growing populations are overwintering on freshwater. And so we're very much interested in seeing what the freshwater loons are doing during the winter. There appears to be quite a bit of difference in terms of their behaviors. And we're finding that loons are usually falling into two categories: those that are really social and stick with one another for the winter, and others that sort of are nomadic and solitary. And there's quite a difference in their foraging behaviors, at least between those two major groups. Sherry, did you want to add anything, or Luann or Erica?
I would just add that Jay tends to be in the social group and I tend to be in the solitary.
Yeah,
no, it's really a lot of fun. You get on the boat, you help gather the data. It's really fun, and it's always a great group of people, and you share meals together, and it's just I've just really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Can you put a link in chat?
Yes, I can provide one. We have it up on the Adirondack Center for Loon Conservation website.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Solitary birds appear to be going for deeper, predatory fish, and the social birds really are going for schooling herring and trying to remember what the other one is. There's a shad as well as a herring.
Yeah, bluefin shad.
Bluefin, threadfin shad. Yeah.
All blue pigs. Yeah.
Interesting. They seem to adopt the same strategy year after year. So we've got a couple birds that we've been watching that we've banded, and they seem to be doing the same thing in the same places.
I should mention, now that we're talking about migration, because it sort of relates. I was interviewed by the PBS, which is strange for me because of where I am. So you guys may see an interview with me through that at some point. And one of the big questions they had was, what happens on the wintering ground? It's like, well,
there you go.
it's a big gap of knowledge there, especially on the oceans. But if anybody does see it, you'll probably see it before I do, and share it with me when it comes out.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully there's a book review coming out by Rob Alvo too, right, Rob?
Book review, yeah. I've mentioned this a couple of times. It's called Loon Lessons, and it by Jim Peru. And it replaces Judy McIntyre's book called.
Oh, it doesn't replace it, but
No.
it's a good book.
I'll read the review. No, it really does. Which was published in 1988.
Right.
So this is 12, 22, 34 years later. And it's a really interesting combination of scientific information and a bit of anecdotal information from Jim himself, from the author. And it's just a lovely book.
Now that sounds like a good
Mark's
place
paper
to
should be out
stay.
soon too, right?
Yeah, actually, is that Jay?
Yeah, this is Jay.
Yeah, actually, I just sent you an email asking you what the status is. But the journal got in touch with me, and I did all this paperwork. So
yeah, it should be good.
I don't know actually where it's at.
Yeah.
Maybe you have a better idea of where it's at.
I'll take a look, but you'll know faster than I do usually once it's out of my hands. But I think, Mark, your paper's coming out too soon, right? The Waterbirds paper?
Yeah, the Waterbirds paper on aggression. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which I think is really fascinating.
Cool.
So definitely share those with the groups when they're finally published.
Sounds good.
Now, we should give you guys time to do all the things you need to do before the next meeting. We will discuss what they are. So on this note, unless we have anything else, it's probably time to say goodbye. And the notes are actually in good shape, so I'll probably share notes on the recording tomorrow for everyone. Okay.
And thanks for
everybody.
the last minute, Kathy, thanks for getting me in there in the last minute.
Yeah, you need to fill out the form. I don't know how you got
Will do.
kicked off the list, Rob, but we need to get you back on.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure you were on there.
Could someone send me the link for the rehab meeting?
Yeah.
Mark, that's you.
Yeah, Gail, do I have your email? I'm not sure.
You want me to,
Yeah, I mean, if you can send me your, or give it to me right now, your email address, I can send it to you.
gaharless@yahoo.com.
EA Harless, HARLES.
It's my name. See my name, Gail Harless?
Yes.
It's GA Harless
Ah,
@yahoo.com.
all right, I'll get that right out.
Thank you.
All right.
All right,
Thanks,
guys.
everybody.
Thank you. I'll see you all in 2 months. You all can meet
Thanks.
without me next month. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.